My name's Eleanor, and I've always been the responsible daughter, the one who keeps her head down, works hard, pays bills on time, and doesn't stir the pot. My younger sister Lily, on the other hand, is the kind of person who can walk into a room, bat her eyelashes, and somehow get everyone to hand her the keys to the kingdom. Reckless, dramatic, attention-hungry, adored. My parents worship her like she's some kind of golden calf. For years, I swallowed it. Birthdays where she got new iPhones while I got a practical winter coat. Family dinners where conversations revolved around her brand deals and aesthetic. I learned to live with being the shadow. What made it bearable was the trust fund. When I was 13, my parents told me there was a fund set up in my name, $67,000, waiting for me when I was older. It wasn't a lottery ticket, but it was security. Something for my future. Grad school, a house down payment, or a safety net if life ever kicked me in the teeth. That promise kept me sane through every time Lily got away with murder. Fast forward, I met Tom. Solid, kind, supportive. He didn't fall for Lily's theatrics, which was honestly the first green flag I needed. We built our life together carefully, brick by brick, and by the time our wedding rolled around, I actually felt happy. Like all the years of being overlooked were finally behind me. That feeling lasted until the after party of my wedding night. I was glowing, dancing with my husband, when my parents pulled me aside. They looked so serious I thought someone had died. Instead, they told me they were making a decision in the best interest of the family. They were transferring the entire trust fund, my trust fund, to Lily. Apparently, her influencer career was her future, and she needed the support more than I did. On the happiest night of my life, they gutted me. I didn't sleep the night after my wedding. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Tom snoring softly beside me, and every word my parents had said kept replaying in my head. The rage came in waves, sharp, hot, almost choking. They wanted to hand my future, my safety net, to Lily. For what? So she could blow it on ring lights and content trips to Bali? The thing about Lily is that she doesn't actually need money. She's already in college on a full scholarship. Her rent is paid for by my parents, and brands send her free stuff constantly. That $67,000 wouldn't go toward a house or grad school. It would evaporate in designer handbags and overpriced brunches with captions like, "Grind now, shine later." The more I thought about it, the more I realized one thing. They underestimated me. My parents assumed I'd roll over like always. They assumed responsible Eleanor wouldn't fight back. But the trust was set up in my name, and I had the access details. The Monday after the wedding, I called Tom at work and asked him to come with me to the bank. I was shaking the entire car ride, alternating between crying and venting, but Tom never once told me to calm down. He just held my hand on the steering wheel and said, "We'll make sure they never touch it." At the bank, we sat down with the branch manager, a middle-aged man with kind eyes who clearly sensed the storm brewing under my surface. I explained everything, how my parents told me at my wedding reception that they planned to transfer my trust to my sister, how I didn't trust them to have any access to it anymore. The manager didn't flinch. He walked us through every step, changing the security details, updating the recovery information, adding new authentication requirements. By the time we finished, my parents were completely locked out. The only person with legal and digital access to the fund was me. I walked out of that bank lighter than I'd felt in years. Not because I knew what I'd do with the money. I didn't. Maybe I'd never touch it. But because for the first time, I'd taken something back. Tom squeezed my hand as we crossed the parking lot and said, "They'll be furious." And I smiled because I knew he was right. 2 weeks after I locked my parents out, life had almost gone back to normal. Tom and I were settling into married life, writing thank you cards, laughing about honeymoon plans we couldn't afford yet. The trust fund was just sitting there, untouched, like a loaded gun on a shelf. I didn't need to spend it to feel its weight. I just needed to know it was mine. Then one Friday afternoon, a man in a suit knocked on our door and asked for me by name. He handed me a thick envelope and walked away without a word. I sat on the couch and opened it. The first page hit me like a punch to the chest. A subpoena. My parents were suing me. The plaintiff line didn't even have their names. It had the name of a prestigious law firm in the city. The kind with a glossy website and partners who probably drink $200 bottles of wine for fun. I flipped through the stack with trembling hands. Their claim was that I had misappropriated the trust. They argued it had been intended for Lily's education, and by locking them out, I was depriving her of her future. Never mind the fact that the trust was in my name. Never mind that Lily was already in college on a full scholarship. Tucked at the very back was a personal letter, folded neatly with my mother's handwriting on the envelope. For a brief second, I thought it might be a last-ditch appeal to emotion. A please, honey, let's talk this out. Instead, it was venom in cursive. They accused me of betrayal, of weaponizing money that didn't belong to me. They called Tom a bad influence who was turning me against my own blood. And the final paragraph made my stomach drop. If you think you can outmaneuver us, you are gravely mistaken. We have the resources, the connections, and the will to pursue this until you have nothing left. It was less a letter from parents and more a threat from enemies. Tom read it over my shoulder, went quiet for a long moment, and finally said, "Then we'll fight them." His voice was steady, but I could feel the anger vibrating off him. I folded the letter back up, slid it into the envelope, and realized something important. This wasn't about money anymore. This was war. The morning of the hearing felt like walking into a storm you already know the name of. Tom drove us there in a silence that was less heavy than concentrated focus, like a band tuning up before they wreck the place. I wore the same sensible blazer I'd worn to the bank. No jewelry, hair pulled back, zero theatricality. My parents arrived in a different costume, a manufactured grief that looked practiced. My mother's makeup was too fresh for someone who'd supposedly been betrayed. My father kept looking at the courtroom doors like they might open and deliver him a script. The law firm representing them looked like a magazine layout. Their lead counsel was exactly the sort of person people imagine when they say, high-powered. Crisp suit, soft but dangerous voice. The kind of smile that suggests you signed the dotted line before you even read the contract. Our lawyer, who I'd chosen because she'd actually read every page of the trust in 2 days and didn't roll her eyes when I cried, sat with a stack of binders that smelled faintly of coffee and righteous annoyance. Courtroom details. The judge was a woman in her 60s with a no-nonsense bun and the kind of voice that turns small talk into felony confessions. The bailiff called the case. The gallery was half family, half curiosity. Lily's boyfriend in the back with an Instagram handle stitched into his hoodie, a few neighbors, and the bank manager who'd helped me lock the account standing off to the side looking barely human from the stress of depositions. Plaintiff's counsel opened with a theatrical summary. Mrs. Carter's parents allege that she has interfered with a trust intended to support the education of their younger daughter. They framed it as noble. Parents protecting a child's education. I felt my throat close. The word education kept getting tossed around like confetti to distract from what the suit actually was, an attempt to take a $67,000 fund out of the named beneficiary's control and hand it to someone who'd already been lavishly provided for. Then our side spoke. My lawyer went through the basics like a surgeon. Read the trust instrument out loud, pointed to the beneficiary clause, my name clean and unambiguous, and explained the timeline of events. She made a small, deliberate flourish and slid a printout across the well. The bank's transaction ledger showing 0 withdrawals. Nothing. Not a red cent. That binder was a small miracle I'd had to beg for during discovery. 9 months of emailed statements, official bank ledger printouts stamped and signed, everything that proved the trust was intact. That moment in court felt like someone opening a window in a suffocating room. Plaintiff's counsel tried the emotional pivot. He asked the judge for a temporary restraining order, for the court to force access to the account while the case proceeded, to preserve Lily's educational interests, he said, with perfectly balanced outrage. The judge leaned back, folded her hands, and asked the simple question the rest of the courtroom felt like tiny people gawking at. Where is the scholarship? Where is the educational need? That question sounded a lot like light on a dark thing. Our side had anticipated that maneuver. My lawyer stood, handed the judge a crisp copy of Lily's official scholarship letter from the university, signed, dated, bearing the university seal, confirming a full scholarship covering tuition and room. There were also receipts. The scholarship had already covered semester fees, and the dorm invoice was paid. The judge raised an eyebrow and paused, like a referee who'd been asked to arbitrate a boxing match and found out one fighter had already left town. Then came the bank manager's testimony. He described walking us through security changes. Updated passwords, multi-factor authentication added, recovery emails changed. He explained that legally, the fund was a trust created for me. And while the parents had access historically, the bank's policy recognized the named beneficiary and my authorization. He testified in the kindest but clearest terms possible, from a man who'd probably seen his fair share of family drama, that while the plaintiffs had attempted to effect a transfer, the system prevented it because the authenticated controls belonged to the beneficiary. The words "attempted to effect a transfer" sounded thin and impotent in the courtroom air. Plaintiffs' counsel asked him the predictable question: did the defendant, me, have the right to lock out the grantors, my parents? The manager answered that the bank followed the trust document and the authorization attached to it. There was no authority for the parents to unilaterally reassign the beneficiary without proper legal instruments. The judge nodded like an ancient tree that's seen human seasons. The emotional crescendo wasn't technical. It was personal, and the court allowed a small portion of that to play out. During cross-examination, my mother, who had an opening performance under the soft light of counsel's narrative, broke. She pinned me as a traitor with an affect that tried to be hurt and ended up looking procedural. The plaintiff's counsel attempted to bait tears and nostalgia, to turn the air into something warm and guilt-laden. Instead, the judge asked my mother a single, clarifying question. Did you ever file the necessary legal papers to change the trust? My mother floundered. No, there had been no formal amendment, no official paperwork. Just discussions at the after-party and a flurry of texts, which, when produced, looked less like official intent and more like entitlement. One text stood out. "We'll just redirect it. Eleanor won't even notice." The courtroom made a small, involuntary sound like someone pinching a balloon. The plaintiffs, this narrative fell apart in public. Their lawyer tried to stitch a different motif, claiming I had weaponized the trust, that I acted in bad faith. But my lawyer calmly placed every relevant document on the judge's desk: the trust instrument, the bank ledger, the scholarship letter, email threads showing the parents' expressed intent to transfer, but not to execute a legal document. There was a devastating piece of evidence that punctured the performative righteous rage. An email from my father to my mother complaining about Lily's burn rate for brand deals and proposing, explicitly and without legal formality, that they redirect funds to keep Lily comfortable. It looked less like a parental concern than a spreadsheet of indulgence. The judge's questions were surgical. She asked if Lily had actually been deprived of education funds. Counsel could not answer yes. She asked whether the trust had been depleted. It had not. She asked whether there was any legal instrument naming Lily as beneficiary. There wasn't. On top of that, the bank manager's testimony made clear that the beneficiary had the right to control access unless a court ordered otherwise. When the judge read her bench ruling, the courtroom hushed. She called the plaintiff's action an improper attempt to alter a clearly expressed testamentary expectation without due process, and said the court would not use its authority to enable what amounted to parental favoritism masked as legal necessity. She denied the temporary restraining order request and dismissed the claim for immediate transfer. More than that, she admonished the plaintiffs for bringing a suit that, in her words, appeared designed to punish a chosen beneficiary for asserting control over their own named interest. The words landed like a gavel made of cold clarity. She did something I hadn't expected. She entered an order that the plaintiffs pay a portion of the defendant's legal costs. It wasn't punitive poverty, but it sent a message courts were for resolving legitimate disputes, not enforcing family grudges. I didn't dance. Instead, I felt a strange lightness seep into my bones like warm tea. Justice in small doses is a subtle drug. The gallery spilled out afterward into the courthouse lobby. My mother avoided eye contact. My father looked like someone who'd lost a favored theory about how loyalty translates into rewards. Lily slipped past us. No dramatic confrontation, just an IG story-ready pout and a whispered, "This is just temporary, right?" As if the judge's order were a slight detour, not a rule. We stopped at a coffee shop on the way home. Tom ordered too much cake. I laughed, oddly small and relieved. The trust remained untouched. The legal system, imperfect and slow, had done what we'd hoped, confirmed ownership and airbrushed away a lot of performative family morality. The aftermath has not been cinematic forgiveness. My parents are estranged now in a way that doesn't take calls or send texts. They sent a formal letter threatening an appeal, one of those phrases that looked fierce on paper but felt paper thin in conversation. Lily posted a story about family drama, then removed it an hour later. I don't know whether she's furious, relieved, guilty, or indifferent. Sometimes at night, I think about the little rituals that built our old family. Dinners with matching laughter, the unspoken rules of who got what. Those things are ashes now. What changed for me is practical and quiet. I updated the trust again to add stronger legal protections, an irrevocable safeguard that required formal amendment through a court or the trustee, not a text message or a staged conversation at a wedding. I don't plan to spend the money. I might never touch it. It's the same number, $67,000, but it's not the number that matters. It's the fact that something promised to me in my name stayed in my name. That, more than anything, was the peace I wanted. There's a small moral sting. I don't think my parents will ever accept the loss of control. They sent a few mutual friends to lunch to talk about family values and how I've been cold. To those friends, I say, you can love someone for who they are, or you can love them for what they give you. My parents were the latter, and the court forced them to confront the uncomfortable arithmetic of that choice. The very last beat? A tiny, unglamorous moment of poetic closure. A month after the ruling, I received an Instagram follow request from Lily's influencer handle. No caption. I didn't reciprocate. Instead, I screenshot it and sent it to Tom with the caption, "Guess she wants to watch the movie." He replied with a GIF and a heart. That's as much of a victory lap as I wanted. So that's it. The trust is secure, the lawsuit is dismissed, the costs partially awarded to us, and my relationship with my parents is, as it stands, broken in places that might heal or might not. I have my husband, my quiet sense of making a boundary, and the knowledge that I fought for something for myself and won without stooping to the level of petty theatrics. Owning your life sometimes requires paperwork and witnesses. It's not glamorous. It's necessary. And if your parents try to hand their expectations to someone else by calling it support, check the paperwork first. The law tends to prefer signatures over speeches.